Now we are going to see how to measure different types of components using our measuring instruments and machines, because before applying any kind of a GDT, we know how to measure a components and measuring process. Okay, now look at it. There are a lot of measuring instruments are used in industries to measure the different types of components, either a cylindrical component or a flat surface component. The first one is surface plate, second one is dial gauge, third one is V block, fourth one is height gauge, and the sixth one is limit gauge. Now look at this 5 different types of gauges used to measure each and every components with the reference of it. Look at it. Now each topic with the detail. First one is surface plate. Surface plate is mainly recommended for a flat surface of components. Either you have a rectangular bar or some kind of a polygonal shapes have a flat surface. If you want to check either it is a flat one with a 0.05 or 0.2 tolerance, you can get this flat surface plate to check your component. That is the use of it. It is not applicable for a cylindrical component. It is only applicable for a flat surface component. Okay, this component helps to measure the overall parts without any deviations, because it is only applicable for a flat measure type of parts. Place the parts to the faces and use a dial gauge or height gauge. You can measure your components with the difference of its flatness. That is what the exact use of this surface plate in our industries. Okay, let's take a look on how to use a dial gauge. Get into the dial gauge. Look at it, a device for measuring and comparing a height and parallelism. This is nothing but if you have a dial type of an indicator from 0 to some kind of measurements, you can know the deviations of your component by just dragging a part from initial portions to the final portions. If you just dragging your dial indicator from one portions to the another portions, you can know the difference of the surfaces. Either you have a flat surface, the difference shows the deviations of its tolerance limits. Look at it. In the flat surface components, it is just dragging from one portions to another portions to find out the deviations of the tolerance parts. Also look at it. It is not only applicable for a flat surface component. You can use either flat surface or any type of cylindrical components. You can use it to measure your components, because it has both analytical method as well as a digital method to measure the component. Now the next one is V block. It is nothing but the static measuring instrument. If you have a cylindrical component, you want to fix some of its locations. You cannot able to fix either in a flat surface or some of its locations, but you want to measure means you use this V block. Take your cylindrical component, either shaft or some kind of a parts, placed on these locations. You can just know the difference of the surface by using a dial indicator. All the deviations we can use a dial indicator to measure the components. Only the foldable surface and placing of the components only differs. Look at these two different images. We can know the difference of it. In these two different images, it helps to know the deviations of this cylindrical block by placing on this particular locations and dragging to know the difference of the surface areas. That is the exact use of this V block to measure the components. Okay. Next we can know the other type of measuring instruments. That is called height gauge. It is nothing but just to measure the height of your particular parts. If you have enough type of components, you want to measure the overall height of the part means you can use these gauges. How you can measure these components? Place your measurable component to the surface plate. It is in 0 tolerance, so you can place your component to the surface plate, then use the height gauge to measure the total height of this exact part. Now look at it. There are two different kind of images shows the difference on the measuring process of this height gauges. Right hand side has a crankshaft and left hand side have a screw parts. Both smaller parts as well as larger parts you can measure by using of this height gauges, with just placing the ball pointer to the particular places and dragging to know the height of this exact parts with the tolerance limit. That is the use of this instrument. Also, it is only available in digital to measure the surface of these parts. Now the next one is limit gauge. It is nothing but if you have a shaft. In the shaft there are central holes are placed on the particular locations with a specific diameter. You want to know the diameter is under our ranges or not. That's why you cannot able to use a height gauges or a vernier caliper to measure this type of an area. You only able to use limit gauge. In limit gauge, there are two different types of a measuring process. One is an go gauge, another one is a no go gauge. Example, if you have a shaft with an internal bore of 50 mm dia, you want to know whether it meets the tolerance limit or not. That's why you need to use a go gauge and no go gauge. Just to insert the go gauge to the particular portions, if it enters the locations, it meets the tolerance. Suppose it not enters the portions, it not meets the tolerance limit. That is the difference we can identify by using of this go gauge and no go gauge. Either it goes or not. Look at it. Now the next one is measuring machines. In measuring instrument, you use different types of instruments to measure the components within the limit or not by handling analog or digital parameters. But if you look at this measuring machines, there are two different types. One is a roundness measuring machine, another one is a coordinate measuring machines. And these are the common machines used for measuring the part with the high-end specifications. These high-end specifications is mainly applicable for high precision parts and high vibration controlled parts. Okay, look at it. The first one is roundness measuring machine. Roundness measuring machine is nothing but if you have some type of components, just to place it on this rotary tool to measure the devices, because the measuring instrument, it is in static control. The measurable tool, it is in rotary control. That is the difference. The component keeps rotating, but the measuring device keeps stationary to measure the overall deviations of this exact part. Look at it. This is the holding process of this exact component on the particular locations. Once the part rotates, the deviations can be measured by the ball pointer under our tolerance limit. Thus, that is the exact working method of this roundness measuring machine. You can see in industries to measure the tolerance control of this exact part. This is the high-end specifications machine used to measure the overall cylindrical type of components, mainly applicable for that. Okay, now the next one is one important one. It is called coordinate measuring machine. This is the one of the important machines used in every industries to measure high-end of components with the right tolerance methods. It has a touch probe used by the machines to quickly measure a physical object just by pointing out the exact locations and point out each locations. It can calculate in an arithmetic means, then find out the exact value to know the difference of the surface areas. Look at it. Just to place the components on the particular locations by holding either a surface plate or some kind of a flat faces in the machine itself. Once the part is placed, it can measure by touching the probe at each locations, random locations to every individual corners. Once it is measured, it calculates with an arithmetic mean, then find out the exact value to know the difference of this tolerance zone. Okay, these are the machines.